Greetings. This is Celebration. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today we'll continue with our recent series, Jews and Their Culture. Now, for those of you new to Celebration, let me advise you that this is a program which focuses on peoples and cultures and tries to get a better understanding of what makes them tick. Now, we do note most of you have some kind of idea about a people or a culture from television and the big screen movies, from magazines, Time, Newsweek, and especially something like National Geographic, which at least some of you are familiar with, and various other sources, including your own travel. So we do take this into consideration. We think that this data is pretty much valid. It's kind of data that sort of emphasizes the positive as a usual situation, and it's not our purpose, actually, to get a better understanding of a people, a culture, by only looking at one aspect, the positive aspect. We're trying to get a total picture. So this is our approach, and we do try to use authoritative reference sources. We try to get sometimes people of two sides of the picture, so to speak, credible people, informed and so forth. We utilize sometimes out-of-print books and little-known books, and news magazines, tabloids, reviews, and so forth. And whatever tends to bring forth credible information which will expand the knowledge of the people viewing this program. And in that sense, we are an educational program, and we do try to give you the real stuff. Now, this does not always make for happy campers, as it were. From the perspective of a people or culture, they do have a way of wanting to have only the rosy side mentioned. But I think that basically, as I've implied, this is what you normally have, so it's not really emphasized by us. However, we do try to give you a real sense, a valid sense of a people and a culture. Now, often a people and their culture is quite vast and fragmented, fractured. There are sectors here and there that are different, even though part of a whole. So this should be borne in mind that when something is being said, for instance, in regard to Orthodox Jews, it may not apply to Reformed Jews and vice versa, or not completely, or there's not a complete meeting of the minds on a particular point of view. But at any rate, we do know, and you should know who have been following my programs, that very important rabbis, for instance, will have their different schools, and they have different schools because they have different interpretations or points of view on certain matters. But at any rate, this is kind of a given, so that should be understood. Now, we have been looking primarily from the point of view of the Talmud, and I believe the Orthodox point of view more than any other. However, our sources, I think, do touch upon other lines of thought. We have been talking of late, the last few programs, in regard to marriage and the Jewish view of sexuality. We even had a kind of a digression, as it were, on a subject that seemed to crop up in regard to what might be called superstition or something of that kind. So we are going to today do a little bit more on this. We try to give you more varied sources, even though each source is presumed authoritative. So let's do that now. Marriage. It is a duty for a Jew to marry and to procreate. This duty falls primarily on the male and secondarily on the female. The only valid excuse for a man to refrain from marrying is if he wishes to devote his life to the study of Torah. But such celibacy is strongly discouraged. God himself assigns marriage partners, and 40 days before a child is formed, a heavenly voice, Bat Kol, decrees who its marriage partner shall be. Before the marriage ceremony begins, the groom, Katan, goes to the bridal chamber to view his bride, Kala, before covering her face with a veil. This custom is based on an incident in the Bible where the patriarch Jacob married the wrong woman because she was already veiled. The wedding service is conducted by the rabbi and Kazan of the synagogue. This is a citation from Alan Unterman, Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, page 128. Well, if my understanding of this is correct, within at least some sectors of Jewry, there is an idea that marriage partners are preordained, and therefore, if this is a true understanding, it would seem that divorce would be indeed a almost blasphemous event, seeing as the partnership is made by God himself. One reason to assume that this may not always be true is that if man has free will, he has the free will to choose someone other than the partner God planned, and therefore gets mixed up in a marriage that's not preordained, and such a marriage may be certain to fail. But be that as it may, let's go forward a little bit more. Now, some of you are probably thinking this Bat Kol is somewhat akin to Layla, who screams forth the destiny, or shouts the destiny of a child at its birth. I do not know for sure. I think we'd have to do a little bit more investigating on that particular point, but it may well be that we're talking about the same. It seems a little bit luxurious of heaven to appoint two such figures to make such similar kinds of pronouncements. Additionally, and in the same vein, please consider, in some communities, the bride performs 7 hakafut around the groom. Blessings are recited over a cup of wine, which is handed to the parents of the couple to give to their respective children. Then the groom hands a ring to his bride in front of 2 witnesses, while the couple stands under the wedding canopy, the huppah. The ketubah is read, and blessings are recited over a second cup of wine. The ceremony ends with the groom breaking a glass to remind everyone of the sadness felt at the destruction of Jerusalem in accordance with Psalm 137. Now this is, again, a citation from Alan Unterman, Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, page 128. But what if the groom does not break the glass? Let's see if we can figure out what horror might befall such a groom. Please consider. A folk belief has it that if the groom fails to break the glass at the first attempt, his wife will dominate him. Well, let me break in here and just observe that in our previous excursion in this particular area, we had the business of the foot fight, so to speak, between the groom and the bride. And each tried to put their foot on top of the other's foot so that they could determine who would dominate in the marriage. That is, if the bride managed to put her foot on top of the groom, she would dominate the groom. So it does look like we have a kind of a different spin on that particular aspect. It may in some way relate to a fear in Jewry of the loss of the patriarchal system. There may be an implication that actually there's no patriarchal system anyhow. Or two, three, it might be an attempt to expose us to a certain brand of Jewish humor. But let's go on. The couple are then led away to spend a few moments together, Yikud, which was once the time when the marriage was consummated, although today it is only of symbolic significance. Since marriage is a sacred bond, it can only be dissolved by a religious divorce or death. After the wedding, the couple are considered to be born anew, and all their previous sins are forgiven. Now this is a citation from Alan Unterman, Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, page 128. Well, that last bit within that citation was rather interesting. I don't know how old it is in Jewish lore and legend, but it does sort of crop up again at the advent of Christianity. And there is a concept within Christianity and within the Israelite religion from which it descends, of Israel being the bride of the Lord. So in Christianity, you do have that concept of union, which is what marriage is about. And two becoming one, which also sort of dovetails in the way with the idea of Israel, the name prince with Yahweh, ruling with Yahweh. At any rate, it's kind of interesting, and we'll leave it go at that, but we do have many people who in Christianity speak about being born again and so forth. In Christ, of course, I mean, becoming one with Christ, being part of Christ, within Christ, a union, therefore, and in that sense, marriage. So we bring this up and proceed. Levirate marriage, a Hebrew yibum. The obligation on a man to marry his widowed sister-in-law if she is childless, and thus produce children to build up the house of his deceased brother. Deuteronomy 25. If he refuses to marry her, then a ceremony of halitzah takes place, during which the widow removes the shoe of her brother-in-law and spits in front of him. She is then free to marry someone else. The original purpose of this halitzah ceremony was to shame the brother for not fulfilling his responsibilities. But today it is standard practice, since Levirate marriage is not permitted anymore. The Kabbalist saw a child born from a Levirate marriage as a reincarnation of the dead brother, thus providing a tikkun for his restless soul and enabling it to find rest. The first male child of the Levirate union was called by the same name as the deceased. Now, this is a citation from Alan Unterman, Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, page 120. I think it's rather fascinating how spitting has worked its way into the Jewish culture as an important expression in some rituals. And I don't know if, like for instance, camel spit or something like this, I think llama do, or some of those South American creatures. But what if a camel spat at people and so forth? This might have, over time, found its way into the Jewish culture, the ritual, and so forth, being born on occasion. But at any rate, we do see this happening from time to time, especially, to ward off the evil eye or something of this kind. So to protect from evil, to shame an erring brother-in-law, something of this kind might be useful. There must be correlatives also. But let's go on. Hakafot, Hebrew for circumambulations, the processions around the bimah at the center of the synagogue. Now let me just break in here a moment to recall to your mind the citation at the outset in which the Hakafot was mentioned. I thought it would be well, since most of you don't know, many of you at least, don't know what this term is all about, to go ahead and nail it down for you. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. There is also a custom in some communities to circumambulate a corpse prior to burial, chanting verses to protect the deceased from the power of demons, and scattering coins in different directions to encourage them to depart. The mystics recommended 7 circumambulations of the graves of the righteous in times of drought, when seeking to avoid impending trouble, or when an individual wishes for children, health, etc. The purpose of this is to arouse the righteous to intercessory prayer to help those in need. It is also customary for at least 10 men, minyan, to walk around the perimeter of a cemetery 7 times when consecrating the ground for Jewish burials, and for a bride to circumambulate her groom under the huppah 7 times in traditional marriage ceremonies. Now this is a citation from Alan Unterman, a Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, page 89. Now, for those of you who are curious what in the world a bimah is, it is a raised structure within a synagogue. Now, there's another term that came up, huppah, which we encountered earlier in our first program, I believe, in regard to love and marriage, Jewish style. And in that particular program, as I recall, both the groom and the bride have special devices, so to speak, presented perhaps by parents a long time in the doing, which together form a kind of a bridal chamber, honeymoon suite, so to speak. at least at the very outset. Over time, of course, it became more symbolic. But I thought, well, while we're at it, why not go back and see what Mr. Unterman has to say about chutzpah. Chutzpah, Hebrew for canopy. The wedding canopy symbolizes the groom's home, under which he stands wearing a keitel and waits for the bride to join him for the wedding ceremony. The veiled bride comes with her parents and in some communities circumambulates the groom 3 or 7 times. The Jewish mystical tradition lays stress on the need to decorate the chuppah in honor of the heavenly bride, the feminine aspect of God, who comes to rejoice with the earthly bride. The chuppah is thus often an elaborately embroidered velvet cloth held on 4 poles, but among some communities of Sephardim, it may simply be a talet held aloft by 4 men. Ultra-Orthodox Ashkenazim erect the chuppah outside under the open sky, as the stars are a symbol of fertility. The more general custom is to set up the chuppah inside a synagogue, despite objections from a number of Orthodox rabbis that this is an imitation of church weddings. The canopy which surrounds the bride and groom has been interpreted as representing the light of God which surrounds all creation. When the couple leave the chuppah, they are, as it were, created anew and begin their marriage purified of all their past sins. Now, this is a citation from Alan Unterman, Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, pages 53-54. Well, I would say that the last 2 or 3 citations given have also given evidence of a certain superstitious strain which seems to have been operating at some point or other in Jewry. Although some may say that this is evidence of chutzpah on my part, I don't think it's something objectionable. By the way, I guess some of you are probably interested in what chutzpah is all about anyhow. Let's just take a quick look at this favorite expression in Jewry. Chutzpah, Hebrew for cheek, impudence. A popular term used in Yiddish to apply to that quality of lovable audacity thought to be characteristic of Jews, and particularly characteristic of schnorer. Traditional text actually describe the people of Israel as the cheekiest of nations. The concept is sometimes defined in the story of the man who murdered both his parents and then asked for mercy from the court because he was an orphan. Chutzpah is often thought of in a positive way, as in the Talmudic expression that impudence, even when directed towards God, is beneficial. It is also used negatively, however, and a law court, Bet Din, which sat with only 2 judges instead of the minimum of 3, was referred to as an impudent Bet Din. Similarly, in the period preceding the days of the Messiah, social values will crumble and impudence will increase. This is a citation from Alan Unterman, Dictionary of Jewish Lore and Legend, page 54. Well, people, I'm not sure if there is a device, something like a chutzpah-ometer, But if there is such, they may indeed find that its readings are pretty high nowadays. But at any rate, let's go ahead and see if we can learn a little bit about more about love and marriage Jewish style. Mamzer, plural, mamzerim. A child born as a result of an adulterous or incestuous relationship is a mamzer. This term has no English equivalent, and bastard is an unsuitable translation because mamzer does not refer to a child born out of wedlock. A mamzer is a full Jew, a scholarly mamzer being greater than an ignorant high priest, but he or she cannot intermarry freely with other members of the community, since a mamzer may not enter the congregation of the Lord. Deuteronomy 23:3. Marriage is restricted to others of a similar status or to converts, and the stigma is passed on to any Jewish offspring. Judaism only ascribes mamzer status where the evidence is not amenable to other interpretations. Thus, the children of a married woman with a bad reputation would still be regarded as fathered by her husband as would those born during his prolonged absence. The child of a married woman who lives with another man, however, is a mamzer. Since the divorce procedures of Reform Judaism are not recognized by Orthodoxy, doubts about the status of some children born into the Reform community make marriage with them problematic for Orthodox Jews. Similar doubts have arisen with Karaites, and to a lesser extent with the Bene Israel of India and the Falashas of Ethiopia. The Talmud states that money can purify a mamzer. That's it, folks. That's a wrap. This is Celebration.